Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
With how intentional you are with relationships with players and students, I would imagine, you spend a lot of time with them off the court, or at least with, intentional conversation. So how and when do you meet with players?
All the time. I had a meeting today. Well, and I want to make them informal. That's the way I like it. I had one this morning between second and third period. I have a very balanced team. And I took one of our juniors who's very talented. He's a lefty. And I said to him, we have 6 players who I could consider 5, who I could consider to be the best player on our team, and you're one of them. You know what that means? And he said, I need to be level-headed every day. I need to be level-headed every day. I said, why is that? Well, if one of us loses it, we're not a complete team because we have so many solid players. It's going to take things away. And so I was comparing it to last year's team where we were really led by one guy, and the one guy never rattled. And I could deal with a couple other guys, rattling, and he got it. So it's in a casual setting. It depends what your policy is at school. I text my kids, and it's always a positive thing. I like to get them when they just get home from practice, and I'll text them. I'm always around. I like to be around, so I like my kids to be coming in the office, and I'll get them always casually. The other thing I like to do is in the buildup of practice or throughout practice is to have an informal conversation with every single player on my team during that practice.
Wow.
Just say, hey, and knowing that this didn't happen. Hey, I heard you and Natalie broke up today. Oh, really? And knowing they didn't. But why did I see her walking? Why did I see her?
You still
walking?
want that to backfire on you right there.
Why did I see her walking with that guy? Just to have those little informal. But when I have to have a meeting, I will. I'm not a big meeting guy. I'm a more informal conversation, because in some ways I feel like more meetings lead to more rules. More rules kind of leads to more tight, like you're uptight. Everybody's uptight. And I'm more into, here's the keys, this is what we do. So if I can approach the kids in the hallway and during our workouts or in the weight room, or with a short text, I think that's the best way to conduct a meeting. And I make sure I communicate with all. This year we have 14 kids, all 14 some way, whether it's at 6:30 in the morning when they're walking in to drop their stuff off in the locker room, and I'm going to put my khakis on. What's up, dog? You all right? You're doing a really good job, man. Hold it together and just know I'm looking at the small things. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking at the small things. I'm not looking at the big things with you. Stuff like that, informal, where they feel comfortable and they know that I don't bite.
Because I know have you always been like that as far as not being necessarily a big rules guy, like Bob Hurley Sr. that had the 19 rules and that all the kids had to live by, but also the clientele he had, maybe.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
he's from a different setting, background and era.
Yeah.
There's no better coach than Coach Hurley at all in the history of our game, as far as I'm concerned. Um, but he had his way of doing things because that's what worked. If he had gone there, if he had used the same policy at Duke, those players would be transferring left and right.
But have you always been like that? And what influenced you to kind of take that approach?
Yes. Trustworthy, like you show trustworthiness. So it's primary pillar, right? My father was, I played for him, and he was the same way. I coached for Jim Herrick. He was my boss at Rhode Island. And you talk about a guy that wasn't ego driven. He's, very informal. You guys have your responsibilities. Let's love each other and let's respect each other and let's go. But that's what works for me. And I've seen it work other ways in other places. So it just works for me. I don't know if my way is the right way.
Well, I think that's the ticket though, right there, is find what works for you and make sure that what is working for you is benefiting your players. You're getting positive feedback from them, right? Because if you want to be a certain way, but it's completely pushing your players away from you, then it's time to change. But that self-awareness to know that is huge.
Yeah. And there's times where, and I always want to keep my players on their toes too. Like today, I was like, Patrick positive, and tomorrow I might, incite a verbal riot in there, because that's more fun anyway. So I'm not always the same way. I try to show that passion and keep my kids on their toes.
How much with you is organization, meaning you've had this script planned, whether it's practice, whether it's kind of the week by week going through your fall or the season, and how much of it is spontaneous? Because I get a feeling from you that you have great ideas, and when they come to you, you go with them.
Yeah. My hobbies, I have hobbies because all I do is think about basketball. So I do these hobbies and I'm thinking about basketball and something comes to my mind, and that's where I get a lot of my ideas. But no, I am not organized at all for the week. Not one bit, not even close. Where I am organized is with a practice plan and with a game plan for our opponent. So I'm an index card guy. I have index cards after index cards after index cards. They turn into notebooks. I write really neat. I get into patterns. Like I start with the legal pad this week, and then I'll get to my note cards. But I use note cards. I love note cards because I take pride in my handwriting because I'm a lefty. And
good for you, man. I can't stand my handwriting.
And well, it's just my parents are teachers. Everybody in my family is a teacher. So you have to have good handwriting. So I like to show my kids that I take a lot of pride in my handwriting, and everything's on an index card. I don't type up any game plan. But really the only time I'm organized is when I have a practice plan. I'm not a big stats guy because I've been told that you can't win with a pull-up jumper in the paint. And meanwhile, I'm watching Chris Paul win, get to the, or our kids just pop it in. I don't although I have noticed that our left corner 3 percentage is absolutely ridiculous at a high level. Like I will look at stats, but I'm not totally analytic because I think that if you want to share the ball, I think you're going to win a game a different way every night. I think your kids have to play with more freedom than to be so analytic. I'm not off the subject of organization.
No.
So I do say that I give them goals. Okay, so this year, 10 turnovers per game that we commit. Okay, 64 shots, offensive shots per game, 20 free throws, and we'll be unbeaten in most of our games if we do that. And I also, and the other one is 43% shooting as a team.
What are you basing those off of? Is it last year's stats, or also what you think they're capable of?
It's experience.
Yeah.
So I know we have to run. We have to run, and the greatest running teams in the modern era. I'll toot my father's horns. His teams were the lowest turnover committing teams in the country. Or you'd see Temple, who is slow down, right? John Beeline is one of the best coaches that I've ever seen, period. And there's about 30 of them, right? His teams at Michigan, his teams at West Virginia, and his teams at Richmond played so fast, and they would average 8.9 turnovers per game, 9.5 turnovers per game. It's those teams that play fast that don't respect the ball that end up being sloppy and lose big games. If you can play fast and take care of the ball, that means you have proper spacing. You're tightening your gaps a little bit. 15 feet of space. You're being direct.
Coach, 15 feet will get them beat. Yes, I remember that from your TABC, and I've stolen that and use it every year. That's all you, man.
I don't know. Thank you. But, no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, that is organization to me. And I say to my wife in the house, and she's always saying, Tommy, what are these clothes doing here? Well, when I change a shirt to go mow the grass outside, I'm going to take that shirt. I didn't sweat in it. I'm going to fold it. I'm going to put it up here on the counter. And I'm going to put the shorts that I was wearing to coach in because I was just coaching. I didn't sweat. I might want to recycle. Why don't you just put them away? And I'm like, honey, that is my way of organization. I'm disorganized, but I'm actually organized. I know where and she laughed her. But, I mean, it's funny. That is my way. Index cards, you have a formula for wins. And there's some teams where you don't have a formula because you might be so loaded with talent that you don't need that. But that's the way I organize.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.